I think that you're real close to putting Don Sweeney on like freeze, like holding pattern. You're not allowed to make any big moves.
They were chanting Don Sweeney, fire Sweeney. And when we first heard it, we didn't know what they were saying. Over the course of the night, it became a lot clearer. 15,000, whatever it was, chanting fire Sweeney. And this comes on the heel of a World Juniors tournament in which the Bruins were the only team to not have a prospect there. This is at a time where people are saying, call up the kids, and the Bruins are probably afraid to call up the kids because if you're a GM who sucks at drafting, do you want your final life raft to be the guys I drafted need to come up and save me? How do you feel about the fire Don Sweeney commentary?
I mean, we talked about it with when they fired Montgomery. It's not going to happen in season, most likely, unless the wheels really fall off. But I think you seriously consider it if this goes this way, and you're talking about a missed playoff spot or just like a completely embarrassed in the first round of the playoffs. I think you definitely consider making a change in the front office. Here's the thing about playing the kids, though, is that. Well, first of all, I'll say this. I think that you're real close to putting Don Sweeney on like freeze, like holding pattern. You're not allowed to make any big moves kind of situation. Because,
they did that. Yep. And that's what this ownership group has done. They did that with Peter Chiarelli when they fired him.
So if anybody's hoping that there's going to be some like real big changes at the deadline, I don't think you want that. I don't think you want Don Sweeney dealing for his job at this deadline. You can maybe be a soft seller or a conservative seller. That would be all right by me, but you're not allowing that guy to make any big moves while his job is potentially on the line. And here's the thing about playing the kids is that I think I understand the argument for it because you're not getting a lot out of this current group. And if you can get a spark out of some of these young guys who you've had concerns about, like their inability to handle the puck, like their irresponsible play, like you're not getting that. You're not getting a whole lot of that from the guys that are currently in the lineup right now either. So maybe see what you got from the young guys, but you're also putting yourself in a position where you're exposing that you don't really have anything coming up in the pipeline. Like these kids, there's a reason that they're not here already. And if you bring them up to the NHL level and you expose the fact that they are not even close to being NHL caliber right now, then what do you have for any trade chips?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, this could be, maybe it's their final, like I said, life raft, but it's also a death knell if the last thing that you do or that you're capable of doing, because you're right, I bet they will tie his hands behind his back. If the last thing you can do is try to have players you drafted save you, and the players can't play, which, with all due respect to Fabian Lysell, Matthew Poitras, and everything, track record-wise, you should guess, based on the other players that this guy has drafted, they're not going to be very good NHL players. You just have to assume that. I hope that they prove otherwise because they're different people and they're their own people and everything. But if they call up these guys to save them and they stink, well, then there's not even a conversation anymore. Okay, well, then what can you do? You put together a bad NHL roster and your reserves and your futures, which this is a prospect pool that regularly, and I'm not kidding, regularly is ranked last in the NHL. Yeah. 32nd or 31st. It was 31st this past year by Daily Faceoff. It was 32nd the previous year. The Athletic in their annual rankings like always has them 32nd or 31st. So I don't know how Don Sweeney gets out of this. I do agree with you though. It doesn't happen this year.
No, because they're not one or two pieces away from like really solidifying. You can get better. And you can get into a playoff spot, but is that good enough? I don't think it should be good enough. Like they're probably right now 2 top 6 scorers away from being a team that's really worth taking seriously or really worth making some noise, even in an Eastern Conference playoff picture that won't be as strong as the field on the other side. Like you're not going to go out and get that, especially when you don't have a surplus of assets in the farm. And are you really willing to deplete what is already a weak farm system to have plug one hole on a boat that has like 3 or 4 holes? You're still going to sink and you're still not going to get to your destination.
It's a good way of putting it. Both of those players, by the way, Lysell and Poitras, are okay right now. Lysell, 18 points in 25 games in Providence. Quite frankly, he was better last year. Poitras, 18 points in 21 games in Providence. So good for them. But they're in a tough spot right now. Seeing some new people in the chat. If you are watching us for the first time, checking us out, make sure you smash subscribe. We would very much appreciate it.
Wubbs is succinctly sums it up. Boston's in no man's land roster-wise, and I think that's a really good way of putting it. It's where I've put the most famous team for me for being in no man's land for so long was the Minnesota Wild, where they weren't good enough to take seriously, but they weren't bad enough to find themselves at the bottom of the league, and that's the worst place to be because you can't like fix yourself that quickly. And right now, unfortunately, I think the Bruins kind of find themselves there. We'll see what it looks like at the start of next year, but I don't know. They're in a spot that they're not even really worth talking about unless they really suck.
And let's say they miss the playoffs. You don't want Don Sweeney making that pick.
No.
Their last 4 first-round picks since 2017. Urho Vakanainen, 2017.
Gone.
Good pick in that he held enough value that you were able to trade him in a first-round pick for Hampus Lindholm. John Beecher, 2019. Playing in the NHL, late first-round pick playing in the NHL, I can't call a bad pick, but not an effective pick. No. Not a big impact pick.
That's, again, one of those guys, like, if this is a good team, John Beecher's probably not on it.
Fabian Lysell, 2021. Jury's out. Dean Letourneau, 2024. No way of knowing. He's a long ways away anyway, but he's tall, and we like him. But that's all to say, since Charlie McAvoy in the first round, and I guess Trent Frederick, respect to Trent Frederick, we love you, this isn't a group that nails high picks anyway. So they do have a first-round pick next year. They have their next 3 first-round picks, which is nice. Don't have a second or a fourth. But if you're going to try to retool this, rebuild this the right way, you don't want to fall all the way to the bottom. You want to nail your 13th, 14th, 15th overall pick, which has proven to be difficult for this group.
We all silly like the mayor.